Welcome to the Lunch Hour with Mr. Credit.
Oh, well, he's very popular.
And today it's Macro Monday.
Sounds like somebody's got a case of the Mondays.
Where we show you the big picture and how you can take advantage of it.
Show me the money!
And now, the Lunch Hour with Mr. Credit on ESPN Radio 1700.
All right, welcome. It's your Lunch Hour. Mr. Credit here. Happy Monday. Monday the 13th of January. Got a great show lined up for you today. Of course, we'll make you smarter than everyone else. It is Monday, and therefore we always have our mortgage guru in the house, John Giroux with Guaranteed Rate. He's the VP of Mortgage Lending and top 1% in the nation. I can now say 3 years in a row. Is that right, JJ?
You can, yeah.
3 years in a row, top 1% in the nation, a huge accomplishment. Want to be the first one to give you a little love.
Thank you.
Since I know it won't be published for another couple months, but we do have the results in. And also a repeat guest that we're having on the show. Of course, the first time in years, my buddy from downtown, Seth O'Byrne, is in the house. What's up, Seth?
Thanks for having me. How's it going?
Yeah, great to have you. You know, we haven't talked about downtown other than the story I shared with JJ about my condominium complex last week and what might be devaluing the property. But we'll talk about that in just a second. So look forward and talk about downtown today. Also, you've written an ebook, which this is, I don't know if you can really even call this an ebook. I think most ebooks are 3, 4, 5 pages, maybe 10 at the most.
Sure.
This is really a comprehensive guide into how you conduct your business. It's called Building a Story. It's a pocket guide to selling real estate at a high level. This particular ebook allows people to see how you conduct your business. It could teach other real estate professionals how they should conduct their business to be operating at a high level. And it also shows, consumers what to expect from their agents. Things that, if their agent is operating at a high level, these are the things they would be doing. It's really, really cool. So we're going to be giving this away today, right?
Yep, we sure are.
And you can actually download it at sethsold.com. If you want to download it for free from the web, you can go there. We'll be talking about it a little bit later in the program. I think off the top, we have to go right to San Diego Chargers football. It's hard not to be upset because I feel like I only saw the Chargers play one quarter, whereas the Broncos played 4 quarters. And it's going to be tough to beat the Broncos when you're playing 1 quarter and they're playing 4 quarters. But we also have to say that what an amazing season, right?
Yeah.
First-year coach, playoff berth, a playoff win. They had me sweating the whole time. I mean, you had to stay in there. At least we didn't get crushed, right? I mean, you would say 2013 was a big win for the Chargers, right?
Well, I probably would differ on that. I
Really?
mean, it wasn't a big win. I mean, it was a decent season. They squeaked into the playoffs, right? With a 1.5% chance of getting in the playoffs, they got in. And, they didn't embarrass themselves yesterday, which was nice. But
Borderline in the first half.
They had so many chances, not just through the season to have a great year, but yesterday they had chances to win the game. And I think that's what they, lacked this year was just, succeeding on those chances. You gotta overcome. When you have the opportunity, you have to make those chances.
The thing that bothers me is that in those games, I always see there's always that one defining moment in the very beginning. You remember Peyton threw that one, and it hit our DB in the stomach. He should have intercepted it at the goal line. And when he dropped that ball, I knew we were going to lose the game. That's where I was at the whole time. Because that's that play that turns things around. You get the interception early at Peyton Manning, you shake him up, we get the ball back. That would have been huge. When he dropped that ball, I knew we were going to lose. So that was a painful game for me to watch because I knew from the very beginning we weren't going to win. You just don't win against those teams unless you make those plays. That said, I do want to congratulate the Chargers on what I think was an amazing season, getting us back to the playoffs, be in the mix, to be trouble. I promise you, the Broncos didn't want to play the Chargers yesterday. Nobody wanted to play the Chargers. They're a dangerous team. But first-year coach, playoff win. There's only one thing that bothered me in the end about the way the game was handled in the end. And the coaches make hundreds of decisions throughout the game, and it's hard to pick apart just one. But there's only one that really bothered me, guys, and that was when we get an onside kickback, we go down and we score points, and then we come back with 4 minutes left in the game, and we still have to score points, a touchdown, in fact. And we kick the ball, we put it in Peyton Manning's hands. Why would you do that? It just doesn't make any sense.
Chances of getting an onside kick twice is
pretty slim.
Pretty slim.
I was still rooting for it. I was at the edge of my couch right there.
Yeah, totally.
I was putting everything I had into that.
Yeah.
My dog was the 12th man, though. I don't know if you saw that Facebook post.
Well, and they had their chance too, right? They had their chance. I mean, they,
3rd and 17.
I mean, hey, they stopped them.
You're right.
At the end of the day, they really stopped them. One play. That's what
one
Peyton
blown
will do
coverage,
to you.
but that's the problem.
Yeah.
And the defense hadn't stopped him all day, so I don't know why you'd think he'd say. I would rather take my chance on getting 2 onside kicks in a row than putting it in Peyton Manning's hands against my defense, who hasn't been able to stop him all day.
Yeah,
that's just where I was at, because you're going to give him your worst case scenario is you give him the ball, But so why just give him the ball? Why not give yourself a chance to get the ball, and then if you can't get it, then you give it to him. That's the way I was looking at it, because the reality is, you don't want to pin them back at the 5 or something like that in that situation. You don't want them to have a long field to waste the clock out. Give them a short field. Anyway, I don't want to complain about it. But, I mean, the bottom line is I think that was the only thing I would have done differently, and it should have worked. You're right, JJ. It should have worked. If the players had executed what the coach's decision was, didn't cause the problem.
They had 2 third-down chances to stop him.
They had 2 different times. In 3rd and 17.
Yeah, that's huge.
So, good point. All right, it was a great season. We'll leave it at that. JJ, remember our conversation last week that I brought up earlier about the dog urine issue in my building?
Been thinking about it all week.
Have you?
Yeah, trying to find a solution.
Every time you
building.
Every time you walk out the front door of your house, you just look around. You smell this fresh, clean air. That's not me. I hold my nose when I walk out the front door, my friend. And here's what's funny, is just randomly I came across a story. And Seth's a downtown expert, so we're going to discuss all this. This is all happening right now. One HOA in Florida got pretty serious about this situation. It's the place is called the Villa Medici Condominiums. Now, the HOA for this place in Jacksonville, Florida, decided to cancel its dog waste removal service. So they had people coming and actually removing dog waste, cleaning stuff up. They decided to cancel to save money. They wanted to force errant residents to comply with the community rules of cleaning up after your pet, whether it's number 1 or number 2. Now, in November, the board instituted a mandatory $35 DNA test for all dogs who reside within the community. Now, they hired a company called Poo Prints who does the testing, and ultimately not only does the DNA testing of the dogs, but matches it to any excrement that might be left behind.
Who gets that job?
Yes, I don't know. But I tell you, I feel terrible because we have a great group of ladies who clean M2I, and they're in there, man. I mean, they're scrubbing everything. It's crazy. The elevators, and I see them picking this stuff up and trying to clean this stuff up. I feel terrible because I know it's not their job, but they want to clean the place. And so anyway, this particular HOA in Florida, delinquent owners, they face $100 fine a day. So what they actually do is they leave it there. They identify whose it is. They leave it there, and then they start building up fines. So there's no way out. You got to clean it up, or you're going to pay in dollars the price. Now, I thought that was pretty awesome for me. I'd be in for that. I would sign up, no question. You can do a DNA test of my cat. I promise you're not going to find anything anywhere. He uses the toilet. All right. So I don't know. What do you think? Is it too far? Do they have the right to do that, do you think?
Hey, you know what? I think it's a great, HOAs can do what they want to do. I don't think it's too far-fetched at all. I think it's, it's disgusting when people leave their pet excrement around. I mean, I think it gets a little more challenging with the urine thing. And I mean, that's, I think in your building's case, the DNA is probably stacked up so thick in a dried, cakey urine sort of fashion that I'm not sure where you would get with that sort of testing. But I don't think, hey, you know what? People want a clean place to live. If you're living in a condo complex, you're paying an HOA fee for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah, you are.
I think it's totally fair.
I agree. Seth, what do you think about this?
Well, I think when it affects property values, you have to take everything into account. $1,000, it's going to cost you more than $1,000 for a turned-off buyer. Someone comes to M2I and they smell dog excrement in front of a condo they're about to spend $600,000 on. They're going to think second about it. And I think that's that's something that HOAs are trying to do, is uphold the values. I mean, it's not just about enjoying your condo. It's about having a condo that you can sell to the next guy.
Yeah.
And I've shown a lot of condos in M2I, and I can agree with you.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Okay, now, am I the only building? Are they signaled me out? Are they following me?
No, unfortunately, I would say 10th Avenue, Fahrenheit, and M2I, both City Mark projects, unfortunately, both have that issue.
Yeah, that would make sense, actually, because it's a long ways from any real patch of grass.
Yeah.
And in the end, I think it really boils down. And there's also a dog walking service in the M2I building, so that's not good. But that's the type of thing where at some point, I don't know if it's the city's responsibility. We're talking about the sidewalks.
Sure.
Where do you draw the line? But I think that's important right now. I mean, if you look at all the things that are happening downtown, we've got, the library is now up. It's beautiful. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's amazing. If you haven't been to the downtown library, you got to go check it out. It's really amazing. There's a lot of other construction things going on there.
New law school.
Sure. They're talking about putting Charger Stadium in downtown. There's all sorts of things going on. These are the little things that really need to be paid attention to. And there are buildings that have figured it out.
Yeah.
Strata, for example.
Yep.
You can walk by the front door of Strata, you don't smell nothing.
Yeah.
Not a thing. You go to the Mark, same thing. You can't get to the front door of the Mark without going through a gate. So there's other places that have figured it out. Of course, you got to pay up if you want to live in those spots.
You certainly do. Yeah, but you look at the Strata, that's a professionally managed apartment building. They have the money to spend on people, both security and cleaning staff that are going to be 24/7. You lower the HOA fees, you get to a mid-rise like M2I or Fahrenheit, they don't necessarily have the financial wherewithal to keep up with this stuff. I mean, you would hope that people self-police, but the reality is they don't.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's not the case.
Well, and they could put, some sort of fake grass, artificial turf on the sidewalk somewhere, away from the building, right, that gets actually water that gets drained down. I mean, I don't know if you've seen in the airport recently, but there are pet bathrooms.
Seriously.
In the airport.
That's awesome.
Right? JetBlue. I mean, I don't know. We fly JetBlue all the time. But in San Diego, JetBlue. Inside, between the men's and the women's restroom, there's a pet restroom with a piece of grass. You walk your pet in, close the door, does his business, probably flushes down, washes,
Seriously.
And it's funny. I mean, it's kind of amusing, but you think if they can do that at the airport, they certainly could do it in front of a building where it's getting cleansed and cleaned and washed. So there's your solution right
Very
there.
good call. I like that. Maybe we should invent something, I mean, where there's an issue, there's an opportunity, let's be honest. All right, let's get to an email real quick. We're going to the Ask Mr. Credit inbox today. We'll go at least a couple times. This one is from Cliff. Cliff writes in, Mr. Credit, I have a question about refinancing. If we don't plan to be in our home for more than 2 to 3 years from now, should I refinance to a lower adjustable rate loan to keep the payments down and cash flow rich? Is it possible to get a no-cost ARM refi? Cliff. That's a very good question, JJ, because if you think about it, if someone's north of 5% or right around 5%, kind of that area where we say, you really need to look at it, an ARM, the rates would be even lower. You have that short-term time frame. That's a really good question.
I think it's a great idea. I mean, this is a prime example where an ARM loan can really be utilized for a positive in somebody's life. You're just not going to be in the property, right? I mean, you're steadfast on that. You're going to be selling it at a certain point in time. Maybe you need to save up for the next property, or maybe you're saving up for retirement. Maybe it's a college education. Maybe you got to catch up on your 401k. There's a lot of different reasons where you need that extra cash flow, and to save maybe $500. I mean, I've seen people save $1,500 a month in payment just from going from a fixed to an ARM. Maybe you go in an interest-only ARM and you save even more. Maybe there's enough equity position where you don't really need about paying down that principal balance for the next couple of years, and you can really push some cash aside. And yes, you can do a no-cost refinance.
You can do a no-cost on the ARM.
Yes, you can.
Okay, and that's funny because I was curious about that myself when I read the first part of the question, just because the way that the back end of these deals is set up now, it's so weird, and it's so nonlinear. You don't know what the answer is.
Well, and it's really interesting. I mean, you look at, I mentioned interest-only ARMs. I mean, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, conventional interest-only ARMs are gone as of Friday last week.
Seriously?
Yes.
So
they don't fall under the qualified mortgage category, so
they're not QM.
Yep.
Interesting. So what would I be looking at? All disclosures out there, blah, 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 blah. Interest rate for a 3-1 ARM.
Oh, you're going to be in the threes.
Someone well qualified. Yeah. Mid-threes?
Yeah.
So that's huge.
That's an incredible product.
Right?
Yeah.
You're 5.5%. If you can cut 1.5% or 2% off of your the interest that you're paying on your mortgage. Now, can you amortize those other than 30 years, or do they amortize at 30 years and then you have to back in whatever payment you want?
There's a 40-year product.
Okay.
So, I mean, obviously you're not, in this case, he's not planning on staying in the property,
Exactly.
so it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Qualifying has become a little more challenging with the QM on interest-only loans, even if they're portfolio products. So, I mean, qualifying is becoming a little more difficult on that end, but you find a way to make it work. Maybe it's a principal and interest loan, and you're taking it in the mid-3s, and you're still saving a ton of money.
Yeah, no question about it. Yeah. Cliff, this is a no-brainer. Give JJ a ring. Just go to askjjnow.com. He can show you all the figures with regard to the no-cost ARM refi, something that a lot of people who have a short-term outlook in their home should really consider. Askjjnow.com, or you can call him toll-free 855-462-7555. All right, coming up, building a story, a pocket guide to selling real estate at a high level. What should you expect from your real estate agent will make you smarter than everyone else. Be right back.
With Mr. Credit. And today it's Macro Monday on ESPN Radio 1700.
All right, welcome back. Macro Monday, Mr. Credit here. John Girotes, JJ in the house. Seth O'Byrne is in the studio today from SethSold.com. Seth, it's been so long since you've been on the show.
It's been too long.
I'm so glad now that you're a part of our regular lineup.
Yeah.
Let's talk about you for a second.
Sure.
Who's Seth O'Byrne?
I felt like this seems like a dating site right now.
Behind door number one.
Yeah. So I have been in real estate now since about 2003, 2004. I started while I was still going to University of San Diego and getting my business degree there. And I started with RE/MAX in La Jolla and started in high-end. I loved high-end real estate. It was a big part of my business until the crash turned and distressed properties became a big part of our business. But even into my second year in real estate, I started building a team. I realized that you could be more effective with teamwork and divisional labor, and that if you built an advertising program that was robust enough, you would have a lot of qualified clients, but not necessarily have the manpower, womanpower to service those clients. So we've been building our team now for about 11 years, and this book is the culmination of what we've learned over training about 36 real estate agents across the county. So it's kind of a best practices book. I think it's helpful for homeowners to read it and see what you should expect from an agent. But we really geared it towards trying to teach other real estate agents in the market best practices.
Okay, so it is designed for real estate agents.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, it's called Building a Story. What's neat is you put a little story in to every chapter.
Yes.
And some of these stories are pretty interesting. Do you remember the one about, I think it was Marilyn and Tom?
Yeah.
That story. Do you want to tell us that story real quick?
So we changed the names to protect the innocent. So I know their real names, but I'm trying to think. What was the premise of the story?
This is the story, the house that was pristinely preserved in Claremont.
Yes, of course. Yeah. So I really like writing. It's always been something I've enjoyed doing. My other major at USD was English, and I've always really enjoyed that. Part of what I love doing is telling stories. So on our social media on a weekly basis, we'll tell interesting stories about people who we've been involved with. So this was kind of an interesting story in Claremont, actually. And this was a woman who called me because her sister and her mother both passed away, and she had this home that was left in a trust. And she had recently been reunited and was at the listing appointment with her high school boyfriend, who picked her up from that home 60 years ago, like almost to the month, for her very first prom, or I guess her only prom, but her first dance at Claremont High. Wow. And they were reunited after they both had gotten married and had kids, and they were both there in that home, and I had met them, and I kind of wrote a little funny something in the letter, or in the note, saying the home was as if someone turned the AC too high and literally froze the contents of that property. It was a 1950s home, and literally there were trinkets and refrigerators and dishes from the 1950s hadn't even been moved. And it was just a really interesting way to become part of somebody's story, and that's part of what this book is about. Is really real estate is the business of people, and it's very easy for business owners to forget that, but I think it's very important for us to keep on coming back to that. And that's what that book's really about.
Building a story. It's a pocket guide to selling real estate at a high level, and you can download it for free at SethSold.com, or you can call Seth at 858-869-3940, 858-869-3940. So who do you think should go and get this thing? I mean, real estate agents who want to operate at a higher level, this is a perfect guide for them. Mm-hmm. Who else should read this for their own betterment?
Well, we definitely want to make some value statements about us as a San Diego real estate team, and this book is partially making some value statements about what we think is important, how we sell real estate, and also the why. I think a lot of people in business attack the how. How do you gain more business? How do you service more clients? How do you build your brand? But I think a lot of businesses lack the soul of their business, which is the why. Why do we service clients? Why are we in the business in the first place? And what is our value proposition to clients? And that's what this book is really about. So I think in a lot of ways you gain knowledge about the personality of our team, both me as our team leader and the 13 people on our team, by reading this and getting understanding of the types of clients that we service, the types of situations we've been in, and the practices that we hold as the pillars of why we believe we can be successful.
Tell me about the team, the O'Byrne team.
So it's a really interesting team. One of the great things that I've been able to enjoy is a long-term relationship with a lot of my agents that work on the team. My very first buyer's agent, Kiki's Jones, who I hired in 2003, still today, 11 years later, is still on our team, along with 7 other real estate agents. They're all very successful full-time real estate agents. They all have area niches that they focus on. Our office is in downtown. Our transaction staff, we have 2 full-time transaction coordinators that put our escrows together that are in the La Jolla office. But our agents all have their own specific niches, even though we operate out of both the La Jolla and the downtown office. We most recently hired a full-time marketing director, Frank Glasser, who came from the San Diego Reader. And we treat each listing as an individual marketing project. And that's one of the things that we're kind of able to do through the way we have established our workflow. But it's really exciting.
Tell me about, the team itself, if I'm a consumer and
yes.
I'm buying real estate or I'm selling real estate, how does your team help me? I know it helps. I know it helps you, right? Because it makes you more efficient. How does it help me as the consumer?
That's a really good question. I think one of the hard things for an individual agent to do is everything all at once. I mean, an individual agent has a family. They have social obligations. They have to do their own marketing, advertising, management. They have to advertise their individual listings, and they have to still show up to appointments on time. The problem is that's just not sustainable. That's just not a business model that really works nowadays, especially because we find homeowners, home buyers, home sellers are looking for a sense of availability that most individual agents aren't going to be able to satisfy. Someone sees something on Zillow on Saturday at 10 p.m., they want to be in that property the next morning at 10 a.m. And with the way the market's going, it being such an aggressive seller's market, when we represent home buyers, we can't tell them no. That's just not simply an option anymore. We need to be able to make everything possible. And that's what it feels like when you work with us as a team, because as I'm sitting here talking to you on the radio, we've put 3 new listings into the MLS. Our marketing director has already developed all the marketing to put into place. And everything's been rolled out into motion while I'm still here meeting with you. Or I can sit down and have a nice leisurely lunch conversation with a client without looking at my iPhone every 5 minutes. And that's one of the issues with individual agents that I think the team wins on is we're never stretched too thin to be available and be present.
I think I just found your new tagline.
What's that?
The O'Byrne team, making everything possible. What do you think, JJ?
I like it.
That's a big
Powerful.
statement. I don't know if I can. Yeah, but no, we're believers. We're very much believers in our business model, and that's what a lot of this is about. I'm sure JJ, you have a team that supports you, and I think it's important nowadays because I think people demand more than they ever have, and I think rather than telling them why we can't give it to them, I would rather figure out a way how to give it to them.
Boy, that's a really interesting idea. People are demanding more than they ever have. Do you agree with that, JJ?
110%.
I know
yes,
I do.
Without a doubt. Yeah, service. I mean, you got to service people.
Yeah, and it's easy to understand when you're on one side of it. But when you can really see both sides of any type of business transaction, then, which is rare. I mean, most consumers, they only see their side of it, right? They only see the side of, well, I need something right now, and you are my guy, so why do I not have it yet? And I totally get that. I totally understand why they would think that, because we're a channel changer society. You know, we're used to pushing buttons and then the channel changes. You know,
Yes.
Things happen. We do something. We send an email. It's been 10 minutes. Why don't I have a response yet? What are you doing?
Yes.
What are you doing other than, responding to my email? So I think it's great that instead of fighting that, you've tried to find a solution for that. I got to commend you for that, because it is one of those things where you sit there and go, well, come on, this is unreasonable. But in reality, if you can break business down to this simple premise that I use, which is give your clients what they want, ask them what they want, give it to them, and then take the money from them. That's business, right? That's business. If you give them what they want, they'll give you the money. Everyone's happy. And if you break it down that simply, well, what people want these days, I think, is what you guys provide, which is a super, super high-level multi-touch point system where, someone can communicate at all times and get a response. I think that's truly amazing and one of the reasons why you've been so successful.
Well, I'm a fidgety consumer myself. I mean, to be totally honest, I demand a lot. You know what I mean? I'm probably not everybody who wants to wait on me at a restaurant. I also demand things very quickly. I grew up in the same era, being 31 years old. I was using computers and, iPhones and, as soon as they came out. And so I think this is a new economy and it's a new consumer. And I think the new business model needs to match that. And so I don't think it's unreasonable for a consumer to demand that either, because I think in other areas we're getting that from much larger businesses.
Yeah.
But I think that is the question I think any small real estate agent in any market is going to have to ask themselves is, how do you grow in size but keep service as if you only have one client at a time?
Yeah.
And that's tough, but I do think it's possible.
Well, clearly doing something right. You want to look up Seth and the O'Byrne team on Yelp. You guys have fantastic reviews there. I think you're number one.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we've been number one now for about 3 years. We're really, really happy about that, really proud.
Yeah, well, you have to be, because there's no way to hide from that. I mean, people are going to say what they're going to say. So if you want to hear what the clients are saying, just go to Yelp and look up Seth O'Byrne and the O'Byrne team. You can also go to SethSold.com and download this free ebook, Building a Story, a Pocket Guide to Selling Real Estate at a High Level, or call Seth at 858-869-3940. Coming up, the downtown market. It has been so long since we have discussed it in depth. We will do that when we come back. We'll make you smarter than everyone else. It's guaranteed. It's your lunch hour. Mr. Credit, ESPN 1700.
Welcome back to the Lunch Hour with Mr. Credit. And today it's Macro Monday on ESPN Radio 1700.
All right, welcome back. Thanks for hanging out. Mr. Credit here. John Giroux, Seth O'Byrne in the studio with me today. Let's talk downtown. We got Seth in here. We haven't talked about downtown in forever. Buying in downtown is a little bit different. We're really buying condos, which is what you're buying if you're buying downtown. JJ, it's a different ball game to begin with.
It can be.
Right? Because, I'm sure there's different adjustments. As far as qualifications are concerned, you have to have certain things. Whether you're buying a condo downtown or anywhere, you have to look at the lending a little bit differently.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, from the buyer's perspective, I mean, credit score is going to be the same. It doesn't really matter. That's not going to change. The pricing for the interest rate is going to definitely be adjusted for the condo. It's a riskier loan for the bank to write. I mean, that's just statistically proven. So Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, if you're doing a conventional loan, there's loan level pricing adjusters that factor in condo pricing hits for the worse compared to a single family home. And the biggest thing is the HOA, and is the HOA in good standing? And the condo complex, is that in good standing? What I mean by that, are there any lawsuits against the complex or the HOA? And we call that litigation.
Right.
In that downtown in the housing boom, so many condo complexes went up. And, the reality is you have specific attorney offices that just go, on behalf of the homeowners and just sue the builders and sue the HOHs. And, I mean, it's the same attorney office, that kind of blankets San Diego. Okay. And that can be a problem.
So if you have litigation, that could be an issue. Seth, that's something that's, I think, hindered people from buying in downtown for quite some time. What is the status, so to speak, with regard to that?
Yeah, it's a good question. JJ, you framed that really well. As you may or may not know, builders have 10 years liability for buildings they build. So, if you're an enterprising attorney that wants to sue a builder under construction defect, you really have a limited window. And lo and behold, most of these buildings were built about 10 years ago, so most of the litigation has happened within the last 10 years, for right or for wrong. The builders have won some of these. Some of these are some of the best built buildings you can find in the world, and they still get litigation brought against them. Notably, some of my favorite buildings that have recently come out of litigation, one is Park Loft. Doug Wilson built Park Loft, and that's a very unique building. I think it's a lifestyle building. It was modeled after some of the huge lofts you find in New York City and Manhattan. And there's 87 units in that building.
I love that building.
It's gorgeous. I mean, that's the building where you go if everything went right in your life.
Yeah.
It's very, very cool. Not a ton of amenities for what you get, but that building really flies under the radar. I recently sold the penthouse there about a year and a half ago for about $1 million, and it's 2 stories, spiral staircase with a waterfall that comes through it, 2,000 square feet on the base, 1,000 square feet just for the master bedroom upstairs.
Wow.
Very cool property.
And those have ballpark views. When
yes,
they're up on that high level there.
Many of them do. A lot of famous people live there, and a lot of people who actually live in Mexico buy those cash because they're close to the San Diego airport where they fly out of. Very interesting building. Doug Wilson also built another building right next to it, the Mark, which you mentioned earlier, that just slipped into litigation, along with the Icon, which is a very cool, hip building for young people to live in.
Icon went into litigation?
Just went into litigation.
Dang.
Yeah. And those are tough because litigation really does freeze a building. There are lenders, as you know, JJ, that you could broker into that might lend. Notably coast to coast. I believe you can probably broker into them. But they're kind of tough loans. So most people buying in those buildings are going to buy cash. The nice thing for downtown has a lot of cash floating around it. But generally, when the only person that can buy in your HOA is cash, the values come down.
Okay.
Because you're limiting the number of buyers that can become qualified for that building.
Right. Does that present an opportunity? I mean, there's no guarantee that these buildings will ever come out of that litigation, right? Or will they?
They always do.
They always do?
They always do. I mean, that's a big blanket statement to make on the radio, but they always do. Every one I've ever seen goes through, and no HOA that I've seen has gone bankrupt or, the fear of doom and gloom is so much larger than the actual reality. These buildings all come out of litigation.
So that's an opportunity.
Absolutely. In fact, litigation speculation is a business in and of itself for real estate investors. I've worked with several where you buy in buildings that have litigation. Generally, also when they're in litigation, the HOAs do rise. Sometimes that's because they're making up for foreclosed units. Partially, that's because they're maybe funding a legal battle. But the HOAs generally drop and the prices spike dramatically. La Vita, which is in Little Italy, right next to Current, that's going to be off a beach. Very, very cool building. High-rise, pool, concierge, the whole thing, went into litigation, and it was in litigation for about 2.5 years. It just came out, and values came up dramatically.
Huh.
I mean, something to the tune of almost 10% in just a series of months.
Wow. So might be an opportunity there if you can somehow figure out how to if you want to be in a building, for example, it's in litigation. Maybe that isn't, maybe you don't stop there. Maybe you try to figure out how to get creative with it. I mean, is it always a deal killer, JJ, if they're in litigation? Does it depend on what kind of litigation?
Yeah, it definitely depends on what type of litigation, but most of the buildings that are downtown in the litigation, I mean, they're going against some sort of construction defect. I mean, that's really what they're going after the builder for is a structural or a construction defect, and that's what the banks don't like. So you do have to kind of go to a niche type product. Of a bank that, I mean, there is a bank that, pretty much will gobble up anything. It's an interesting dynamic, definitely a specialized type of lending platform to go after condos that are in litigation. But, when you do have a limited amount of people that can obtain financing, most of the cash are going to gobble up those properties, and they're going to get, the better deals on the properties. And, you think about litigation. Litigation has to come to an end. I mean, again, big blanket statement, but it's a case, right? It's somebody getting sued for something, and there's a finality at some point in time to that. So whether it's a year or 3 years, at some point in time that will get concluded with a resolution of something. And at that point in time, once the litigation is over, either repairs have been made or nothing's happened, but the litigation is done and normal lending can go back in, and that's where you see the price points go up.
Absolutely. And you could also purchase with financing right after the litigation ends. We closed an escrow, I think, a month after the litigation ended at La Vida. Yep. And you still see a lot of that same appreciation. I have some statistics for you. It might be kind of interesting. In the last 90 days, 92101, this is during the holidays too, so it's pretty remarkable, sold 173 properties with an average sales price of $567. So average market time around 50 days.
Wow.
It's a high-performing market. A lot of people still believe we're in a downtown market where we have standing inventory. That may be true above the million mark. That's a niche buyer. There's not as many buyers out there for the 3,000 square foot penthouses. But for the $400,000 and $500,000 home buyers, it is still a very, very aggressive seller's market coming out of the summer. We really haven't slowed down.
The construction is what's incredible to me.
Yeah.
And some of them are coming up and they're just rentals. The 13th and Market place. That's
Vantage
done.
Point also, yeah.
Vantage Point, they're just rentals. But there seems to be still a ton of construction going on. I mean,
absolutely.
You can't drive down any street without seeing, they're doing something there. That was a parking lot. It's going to be a high rise. And I had this moment when I was in Chicago. I was at the top of the John Hancock building looking out over Chicago and seeing all these high rises and going, man, it takes over 100+ years to build all this stuff.
Yeah.
I see San Diego, headed in that direction. I'm watching it happen right before my eyes. I mean, if you look at the picture of what downtown looked like before the ballpark went in, it's a ghost town. There's nothing. And that was only 1999 when they took that picture that's at Petco. So, in this short period of time, a lot has happened and a lot continues to happen. For me personally, Seth, I think the downtown market is where one of the better investments can be made.
Yeah.
If you're smart about it. I really like Park Terrace as one of those places because that was on the outskirts at one point. Now it's not anymore. The outskirts are getting pushed away from it, and it's right across the street from the ballpark.
Sure, yeah.
So for me, I really, really like the fact that the price points in Park Terrace are still reasonable. I think it's a great investment there. But really, anywhere that seems like it's on the outskirts now, it's not going to be for long. So I feel like there's a lot of good opportunities in downtown right now.
I think so too, and I think one thing with unlike building subdivisions, KB Homes or DR Horton, plunking out subdivisions on 7,000 square foot lots in suburbia, a healthy downtown stimulates business and job growth. There are CEOs that are trying to decide what major metropolitan city to put their business in, or even small business owners that maybe only employ 50 people. The stronger downtown is, the stronger we will have a jobs picture. And I could be a great example. I moved my real estate office downtown when the market shifted, and we really started moving a lot of downtown properties. And, I employed at the time about a dozen people, and I live downtown, and I love the idea of all of our agents walking to work and walking to show property. And we're just one small business making that decision. Expanding Scripps Ranch, expanding San Marcos is not necessarily going to do the same thing. For the way most economies work, as far as I see it, you find the jobs, then you build the housing. Downtown is a unique proposition where the housing has actually brought business back downtown, which is a really remarkable thing if you think about it.
That's true. It's really, really interesting the way that has happened. And for a period in the 06-07 range, you just saw one business after the other going out of business. And now you're starting to see the businesses that stayed, that figured it out. The ones that started 2 years ago, they're still there. They're thriving. So things look really good in downtown. If you're considering buying a home in downtown, or you'd like to get some information about buying a home in downtown, just go to SethSold.com. You can also download his free ebook there, Building a Story, SethSold.com, or call Seth O'Byrne, 858-869-3940. Coming up, your questions in the Ask Mr. Credit inbox. We will make you smarter than everyone else. That's guaranteed. Be right back.
If you would like free advice from Mr. Credit, just call or text 619-786-7853. That's 619-786-7853.
Have you five?
Welcome back to the Lunch Hour with Mr. Credit. And today it's Macro Monday on ESPN Radio 1700.
All right, welcome back. Thanks for hanging out. Mr. Credit here. JJ John Giroux in the studio with me today. Seth O'Byrne from the O'Byrne team, SethSold.com. Getting to the Ask Mr. Credit inbox. Don't forget to stick around. Top of the hour, Lori Miller is in the house. Real Radio Now. It's a 2-hour program from 1 to 3 p.m. Lori is a ton of fun. Stick around for that. This one is from Art, who writes in through MrCredit.org, where we answer your questions for free. My wife and I have decided we want to downsize our home, but we're not sure what order to do things in. We should have a nice profit on the home. We bought it in 2010, more comfortable. Should we put the home for sale first or start looking at homes to buy first? Any advice would be great. Let's talk from a lending standpoint, JJ, first on this, especially when we're saying we have a nice profit in the sale. A lot of times that's going to turn into a down payment. So that might make the decision on its own.
Without a doubt. I mean, I think the first step is to make sure that we can qualify for the new home and to get just pre-approved, just to go through that process to see what the mortgage is going to look like on the purchase. Mm-hmm. I mean, that just, you got to get your finances in order. You have to make sure your credit report looks good.
Right.
Make sure there's no mistakes on that. I mean, how many times do you run a credit report and something's on there that you have no idea that's on there, and the next thing you know, that could delay things a couple of months in itself. So first step is just make sure you can afford what you're looking to do and make sure the financing can be there for you when you make that opportunity exist. The next thing is really to sit down with someone like Seth to find out how much is your home really worth.
Yeah.
And what are you, you may have a number in your head, I'm going to net $250,000, but is that number realistic, or maybe is it much higher?
Yeah, you need to know that. No
Gotta
question
know
about it. Seth, what do you think here?
Yeah, you're going to laugh at me when I say it like this, but you know the concept of vision boards.
Yeah.
Small business owners, that kind of thing. I think it's important to know what's out there because you need that vision of why you're going through all the trouble of talking to a lender and doing all this. Still yet, I think your first actual move should be talking to a lender. That always should be the very first thing that you do. But I do think it's important that you go out and you whether you're looking on someone's website, an agent sending you some properties, I send some properties, you go on Zillow, you should look to make sure that there's an attractive lily pad to end up on. And that's going to help keep you motivated through the process because I'm sure JJ can tell you it's a simplified process, but it's still a lot of work. And I think if you have a clear idea that where you're going to end up is the right spot, but you know what, there's certainly no sense in getting in the car and driving around for hours and hours unless you really have a financial idea how to make it work.
Well, I got bad news for Art because the reality of the situation is that while prices have gone up and you might have a profit in your property, prices have gone up. So that house you want to downsize to might cost the same as your house did when you bought it. And so I think you really, like you said, Seth, you got to kind of look and see if there is that lily pad out there, in that price range we're looking at based on where interest rates are today. I mean, 2010, we were still I don't know where we were in 2010, but we were
low fours.
Low fours at least, right? So maybe you're going to be back in the same boat, but have less house. And maybe that doesn't make any sense, even though you want to downsize. So you really do have to look at that. That's kind of that's the bad news about when prices go up and you want to downsize. It's like, well, they go up in the lower end first. So, no, I don't know where you're at in the spectrum of things, but if you're going down, prices tend to go up more the more you go down, if that makes any sense, Art. So I think it makes a whole lot of sense to talk to JJ, no doubt about it. Just make sure that you would even have a chance to qualify for a new loan because that might change the whole gamut right there. If you have to go and fix a credit issue, that could be 6 months. That could be a 12-month process. Maybe you thought you're getting away with something because you're hardly paying any taxes, but you're not showing any income. You know what I mean? You got to figure those things out. If you can't qualify for a new loan, then you're going to sell your house. You're going to be a renter. and you don't want to do that. So you got to talk to JJ first. Just go to askjjnow.com or call 855-462-7555. A very close second step that I would say is to find that lily pad. Make sure that there is a house that would be considerable for you and your wife at the price range at which you want to have your payments at. That really is going to determine everything for you, I believe. Now, if you're really that stressed out about your payment and you want to sell and you would rather rent than have this huge payment, hey, okay, I get it. Take a breather, all that stuff. But there's risks involved with that, and you need to know what those risks are. Talking to Seth would be a very good idea, not just because he's an expert in downtown and high end and stuff like that, but because he's just done so many deals over the years and can give you some really good advice, which you should be a good idea, Art, to download his free ebook, Building a Story, at SethSold.com. And you can call Seth directly at 858-869-3940. Anything to add, fellas, for Art?
No, I think it actually does make sense to kind of see what's out there. Mm-hmm. I mean, it does. It's because if you don't find if you don't have that vision of where you're going to land, it makes the paperwork aspect and going through the motions that much harder. I mean, if you don't have that end goal, so I actually like that a lot.
Yeah, you're reactively maybe doing the wrong thing. You're reacting to the fact that you don't like this payment. Hey, you've got equity. Maybe you can refinance. I don't know. Mm-hmm. And that's why you talk to JJ first, because, hey, maybe it's the case that you think you've got a good interest rate, but you got 5.5%. Maybe you just got a bad deal to begin with, and that's why your payment's so high. Maybe you've got mortgage insurance, and that's what's making the payment so high. And guess what? Your property value went up, so now you're not going to have mortgage insurance anymore. And you can lower the interest rate. I mean, there's lots of good things that can come from that conversation that might make you think differently about moving. However, if it's the case that you do decide to move, you're still taking the same first step. So it's pretty simple to me. Just contact JJ, askjjnow.com or 855-462-7555. Fellas, thanks for your time today. John Drotes, as always.
My pleasure.
You the man. Seth O'Byrne, great to have you back.
Have a great week.
Fantastic stuff, Seth O'Byrne and the O'Byrne team from SethSold.com. We'll be back again tomorrow at noon to make you smarter than everyone else, guaranteed.
Thanks for listening to The Lunch Hour with Mr. Credit on ESPN Radio 1700.